Let me just put a fine point on the first series of questions that the chairman asked, and that is one of the things I said in my opening statement is that it doesn't seem like the contracts are being modified to address the law that uses the technologies that we have but takes the next step forward. But it is our understanding that you received a general counsel opinion from NASA that said that you could, without violating any prohibitions on new starts, move forward, setting up the program offices and starting the implementation of the law. And it is further my opinion that you now are setting those offices up. This is my question. Are there any legal impediments in the minds of those of you who are running the operations at NASA to your moving immediately to the modification of useful contracts, initiation of aggressive vehicle design efforts for the heavy launch vehicle, and other requirements of the Act? Mr. Cook or Mr.
Yes. As you said, we are setting up program offices. We have the notifications up here. I think the time is almost up for that time frame. And in terms of the specific contracts that we have, for instance, on the crew vehicle, MPCV, we have changed and scaled back some work on that, partially due to budget, but also as we do that, we are focusing it toward where the future lies in terms of the Authorization Act. In terms of the existing contracts for Ares 1, which includes the first stage, upper stage, and avionics unit, and J2X engine, we are progressing on those and focusing that work on work that would apply to heavy lift vehicle. And it is a little different in that it's going from a lower performance vehicle to a heavy lift vehicle, but we have focused efforts on those contracts to be as specific as possible to this future of a heavy lift vehicle.
So am I to take then from your answer that you are, where the contract is one that will be ongoing but with modifications, that you are beginning to make those modifications so that you will keep your experienced workforce going to the next transition vehicle or launch system?
We are at this point focusing those in that direction. We still have to come up to agency decisions in terms of final procurement regulations on how we would make the set of acquisition decisions for a heavy lift vehicle, and would then have to apply those specific contracts for Ares 1 if they can apply to that vehicle, provided that is where we get to in those decisions. And there are a number of things feeding that decision, and that is that we are assessing those contracts for whether or not the current contracts have this new capability within scope. So there is a significant effort on understanding that. There are also studies that we have at Marshall Space Flight Center looking at alternate concepts that will either validate or challenge this approach, one of which is looking at LOX-RP engines. One is looking at what we call a modular approach. And we also have industry participation in study contracts that we have had out on the street, and they have been working to over the last few months. They're 6-month contracts that will help advise us to make sure that we get to a decision of a cost-effective vehicle, making sure that we have the input of and assess those inputs from not only our internal teams but industry teams as well. So we have not gotten to final decisions on the acquisition on the heavy lift vehicle or the crew vehicle because we need to understand how these current contracts apply, whether that is the best value for the American people and the government, and we need to understand the phasing of those contracts in an integrated sense within the budget constraints that we see. So I hope that
Well, I'm trying to get just a clear answer to whether you are going in the direction that the law asked you to go, or actually told you to go. And are you doing that, and are you doing it in a timely way?
I believe that the work that we have ongoing is headed that direction. For those specific contracts we have underway, we have not gotten to the final decisions on the final design of the heavy lift vehicle.
But you're moving along the
Yes.
lines that the law requires. I'm not
Yes, I
saying you
believe
have to
so.
have designated who your final contract is going to be with. Obviously, you have all the procurement issues there,
Right.
but are you moving toward the type of use of present technology, but with the further mission beyond the present one of using our technology, but also being able to adapt it later for beyond Earth orbit, and all of the relevant pieces of that?
As I understand your question, I believe we are.
Thank you. My time is up, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask one other question, and that would just be, are you satisfied that after the April shuttle, that we will then move on to the last one that is now scheduled for June, to finish everything that we believe will be needed for the International Space Station, and what the equipment that we will need for it, and any of the other pieces in that June mission that we're going to need for repair, and whatever it will take over the period that we are not going to have Americans being able to go in shuttles?
Yes, we're moving out fully to support STS-135, as you described. From a manifest standpoint, we've identified all the cargo that we need to carry on that flight. We're starting to identify what cargo we might return from space station, because that's a critical capability we'll lose temporarily when the shuttle goes down until the new commercial providers come online. So we're moving out for that mission. The only concern is that if we got a significant budget cut somewhere here in the CR activity, that could potentially cause some concerns for us to execute that flight just from a budget standpoint. And unless we get a pretty dramatic budget cut, we plan to go execute that mission. We see that mission as extremely critical to us. What that mission provides for us is it gives us some margin that if the commercial providers are a little bit late and they don't fly in late 2011 and in 2012 as they've been planning, then we've got some time through 2012 that we'll have enough supplies pre-positioned on space station that we can continue to do quality research. We continue to keep our crew size at 6 on board station through that period of 2012 all the way until 2013. If we don't have that shuttle flight, then it's absolutely mandatory that the commercial cargo providers come online at the end of this year and early into 2012. And I don't think that's a prudent strategy. We need some margin. Just as, you know, even in the shuttle world, we thought we understood where we were going to go fly, then we had the tank problem that slowed us down a couple months. I would expect small problems to show up in the commercial provider side as well, and we need some margin to do that. And that's the criticality of STS-135 for us. It provides us essentially that 1 year of margin that can really make or break the critical research on board space station. We really want to get to where we're utilizing station as a full-up research facility, getting the most out of the crew, the most out of the research we've got on orbit, and to do that, we need to get the station resupplied with the shuttle while we can use that asset, and then we can let the commercial providers come online throughout the period of 2012 and into 2013.
Well, thank you very much, because that allays my concerns to a great extent, because if we aren't going to use the space station, we have thrown a whole lot of money away, and we have let down our allies who have made significant contributions to the space station. And it was a concern of the chairman and myself both that we weren't going to fully stock it, and in fact the payload that we're taking up in April, the spectrometer, was something that we insisted on in the previous administration with the previous administrator. And so I'm very pleased that we're going to take that, because I think it has great potential for energy research. And then beyond that, we just have to stock so that we do address the eventuality that you have addressed. It's just not good policy not to. Let me just end by saying that I believe that the sentiment on the Hill now is that this would be the last temporary continuing resolution that we will pass, and that we must go to the long-term continuing resolution that takes us through the end of the fiscal year, so that you know what you're going to have to spend, so that the Department of Defense knows what it has to spend. And I think there are certain areas of our budget that we cannot allow to continue to go in 2-week increments. It's just not feasible. And certainly NASA is one of those that I have been bringing up repeatedly, must be in a long-term CR, and that must be the next one after this 3-week one that is before us. So I do thank you very much, and I thank you for indulging me a little beyond my time.
And again, Senator Hutchison, thank you for your continued vigilance, as you have been so much so throughout this process.